Hello. It's good to be able to share a pause for thought with you now. And I was remembering, actually a very long time ago, when I was at school, secondary school, we were just getting into some sports that were coming from America. It was in the early days, so we were introduced to basketball, and that's something I really quite enjoyed. I can remember about the same time, and it is going back a long way. I don't know whether you recall it too. Saturday afternoon sports on the television occasionally would have the Harlem Globetrotters playing basketball, which was just so entertaining, just so amazing. These guys, so tall and so fast, playing basketball. Used to love watching that. I was reminded of these things because I was reading about two basketball players, both famous in their own way, but two very contrasting players. In 1962, one of them, Wilt Chamberlain, became the first and still to today's date the only player to score 100 points in an NBA basketball game. During the game, he converted a record 28 out of 32 free throws. Now that's an impressive 87.5% success rate, whereas the National Basketball Association average was around 73%. But looking at his whole career, Chamberlain only averaged 50%, a figure far lower. So how did he go from scoring only half to almost 9 out of 10 free throws in that one game? Well, he shot underhand. He released the ball from below his waist. They called that the granny shot, rather than above his head, as is and was the norm way of shooting. And that simple change turned him into a record breaker. And yet, despite this, at the end of the season, Chamberlain went back to throwing overhand and saw his conversion rate fall back to 50% again. Do you think that's crazy? Well, I do. Why would anyone choose to do something that they knew was wrong for them? And Chamberlain explained it in his own words: because I felt silly. People made fun of him for shooting like a granny. So he changed even though he knew it was the wrong choice. Can you imagine caring so much about what people think about you that you make the wrong choice? You choose not to do the best thing? Well, I guess you can understand that, can't you? Because there's an awful lot of pressure on us to conform, and it's so much easier to go along with the crowd. It's hard not to go with the rest. And as Christians, we often feel as if we're swimming upstream and all the other fish are going with the current, heading downstream. Psychologists call it the threshold model of collective behaviour, but we know it as fitting in, following on, following the crowd. Sometimes it means turning a blind eye, even when we know that it's stupid or wrong or cruel or harmful. In the history of the National Basketball Association, Rick Barry, another basketball player of the same era, is the only player who consistently used the underhand technique, the granny shot. And he retired with, guess what, a 90% conversion rate and a reputation for not caring what people thought about him. Well, he'd need that, wouldn't he? Chamberlain might be a record breaker, but maybe to win in life we could all do with being a bit less like Chamberlain and more like Rick Barry. These days it's hard to be a Christian, to do the right thing, to stand up for family life, for traditional marriage, to stand against drugs and so many other things that are going on in our society. There's an acceptable level of dishonesty and integrity, even in high places, seems to be lacking so often. The rule for most people, and it's a worldwide rule now, is follow your heart as long as it doesn't harm anyone else. In other words, do what I want and hope no one gets hurt. Jesus' definition of living a good life is to will the good of another ahead of oneself. The world puts itself first, and we can see the results of it all around us, can't we? For a Christian, to follow Jesus' teaching and the teaching of the Bible is the ultimate standard. That's the record-breaking way to live a life, the good life. The world does what it thinks is best, and look at our society today. Can I encourage you to be a bit less Wilt and a bit more like Rick, those two basketball players, to be prepared to stand up, to let God's word, God's truth govern your choices. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth and the life. Let's follow his example. Let's try and be a bit more like him every day and make the world a better place. God bless.